Hey guys, so unfortunately day 3, you remember the shots of the tent site, how nice it was. We were all set up and ready to go for the last day. It was going to be, I think it was like 6 or 7 miles in to 19E, go back to the station at 19E, get ourselves some awesome sandwiches there. Things went a little sideways. I got up in the morning and I actually went to do my business in the woods and was feeling kind of dizzy and funny. Thought it was just because the ground wasn't really level, but it turned out that it was more than just that. I sort of made my way back to the tent, and my nephew, Science, he said, "Hey, you feeling okay?" I said, "I think so. I just got to get back to my tent." Lay down, sort of just lay there in front of the tent. And then he asked me, he's like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, just let me lay here for a second." And then I said, "Hey, help me up." This was a few minutes later, maybe 5 to 15 minutes later, of just laying there in front of the tent. Anyway, so I get up, and as I get up, I fall into his arms and pass out. So he helps me down to the ground. Has my other nephew whose trail name is Firebender. Firebender sits behind me, knees up. He props me up against his knees, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. Ask me if I'm all right. I'm like, "Yeah, that was weird. I don't know what's happening." And so anyways, everybody's been trying to have breakfast and kind of getting things ready to leave camp, to leave the tent site. And all of a sudden this is going on, right? And so then they were like, "Do you want to try to sit up in the camping chair that one of my nephews had brought?" So I was like, "Yeah, maybe that'll help," right? So we try to set me up in the camping chair, and as soon as we get me upright and into the camping chair, I pass out again. It's not good, right? So they set me up against this tree that was right behind there, and I'm just sort of propped against the tree. And then I was like, "Listen, I think I just need to get back in my tent and rest. I think I must be dehydrated, or something must be going on in my body that I just don't know." So I was just like, "Let me get back in my tent." So I literally crawl back over the tent, crawl in. As soon as I get into the tent, I realize there's something going on in my stomach, and I yelled for a Ziploc bag. Most of us had some 1 or 2 gallon type Ziploc bags, either for clothes or food, trash, things of that nature. So one of them quickly brings me a Ziploc bag, and I just vomit. I let loose of a bunch of stomach acid that just filled almost that entire, at least about a gallon, almost 3/4 of a gallon of stomach fluids. It just came out into there. Sorry for the grotesqueness, but so I don't know what's going on. I hand it off to them. I quickly say, "Hey, give me another one just in case," but I was fine after that. I roll over, lay down, fall asleep a little bit, kind of just rest a little while, start to feel a little bit better, and start to pack up and think I'm going to be okay. They asked me, by that point they're already kind of texting with family, right? My wife, my sister, and her husband, who was staying nearby, and just kind of letting them know what was going on, that I wasn't feeling too good. We were even having conversations of maybe just staying in camp for another night and just letting my body sort of recover from whatever was going on. So anyways, a little bit later, after I started packing up, started feeling like, "Oh, okay, I think I can move again." I let them know, kind of like, "Hey, I'm going to come out and come eat," stuff like that. I come out of the tent, and you can guess what happened. As I tried to get up, I pass out again. They catch me, they lay me down. At this point, actually, I think our tent had gotten broken down. So I was laying on a tarp. I remember on the tarp they put a a sleeping bag over me, my nephew's sleeping bag, because it wasn't packed up yet, or he quickly grabbed it just to give me warm, because I was starting to get cold too. And it wasn't too cold at that point. It was chilly, but it wasn't that cold. Not enough for my body to shiver the way it was. And so nonetheless, I had that over me, laying there for a little bit. And next step was to find out, again, what to do next, right? So there was text conversations. I have gut hooks. We had GPS location. We knew where we were on Little Hump Mountain. There's a sort of a tent site that's designated, but it's not necessarily got a name. It just says tent site. It's about halfway up Little Hump Mountain. Great tent site. And so anyways, so day 3, this is how this goes, is my sister's husband says, "Why don't you call the shuttle driver? I bet he has a really good idea of where he's at." So she did, and David lets them know, "Hey, listen, I know where he's at. I'm calling in the rescue team. We'll send them out there." So we had kind of 2 parts of the rescue team. Avery County Rescue, thank you very much, from Avery County, North Carolina, shows up, and also in the EMS, and there was like a trail rescue guy. I want to say, I know the names, I'll leave them off of here just respectfully, but they're amazing. They were great people. All of them sort of come from out of nowhere. So there was 2 or 3 guys who came on a 4-wheeler up the fire trail near us, up to the AT, and then came on up the AT from the fire road. And then the others literally came up out of the woods from down the mountain. I don't even know, just slashing them, making their way up through. and we were just like, how'd you guys even get here? This is what we do. We rescue. They were there in less than 30 minutes from that call. So very quickly, I would say maybe 15 to 25 minutes max. It was fast. It was amazing how quickly they got to us, because I kept thinking it would take us hours to get out of here. But our nearest way out would have been the Over Mountain Shelter to Yellow Mountain Gap exit, which was about a 4-mile hike out of there. So rescue team comes in. They ask me if I can sit up, right? Can I sit up in the chair? And I let the EMT know, I don't know. Like, really, last time I tried to sit in this chair, it did not go well. So the next step was to try. We got me up in the chair, and I actually was okay. And I was like, okay, well, I am feeling a little better. I don't feel lightheaded sitting in the chair. But she broke out a needle, and I saw that needle, and she could see my uneasiness. And I don't know if it was just because I've already gone through passing out 3 or 4 times or what, but nonetheless, when that happened, I was okay at first. And she said, she saw me look away into the trees, just kind of. I said, yeah. She's like, think about the trees, think about other things. So I did. I looked out at the trees. I just joked to take my mind off of a needle about to go in my arm, and she was just giving me an IV, but she wouldn't put that needle in to give me an IV. For about 10-15 seconds, I was okay, and I was like, all right, I'm all right. As soon as I thought I was all right, I wasn't. I fell to the ground. They caught me. They lay me back down on this tarp. They throw the sleeping bag back over me, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. They asked me a few outlining questions to try to see if they could help, and none of them really sort of, I guess you could say, fit for what they felt like they could feel comfortable with for making a decision on what to do next. So they were discussing whether to try to take me out on the four-wheeler with my bag and one other person possibly, and then get me out to that side road, which probably would have been out that way by Over Mountain Shelter. Nonetheless, they just didn't feel comfortable with it. We couldn't figure out what was going on. There was fear for internal bleeding or something going on internally that shaking me up and down on a four-wheeler wasn't going to take care of. So the next step was to call in a helicopter. And so my nephew Science had been joking, well, anything goes wrong on this hike, you know, he kept saying, we're going to call in the helicopters, right? And I was like, great, man, you ushered this idea in, and now here we are. And I'm just going back and sharing this with you. So crazy experience, end up in the ER at Johnson City Medical Center. Meanwhile, here is a few of the shots that I was able to pull off of Facebook from the rescue team, picking me up and flying me out of off of Little Hump Mountain. Hey guys, good morning. I'm back to continue to tell you the story about day 3. Now, laying on a tarp, covered in my nephew's sleeping bag, and laying in a basket on the back of a side-by-side four-wheeler, going up Little Hump Mountain as one guy pushed, another guy whacked weeds, and another guy drove, and they shifted me in through trees and in and out until we got to the clearing areas, and then up on the top of Hump Mountain, where, as you saw in the photos, there was a helicopter waiting. Actually, it was coming to land right as we got to the top. That was great. So, as you can imagine, where I got my name, Wings Air Rescue were the folks who were there to take care of me from that point forward. Awesome pilot and EMT there, and the pilots they're talking me through the whole thing. Right, they're just checking on me as we're flying, as we're taking off, just making sure I'm good. And the transition was great. And to be really honest, I was fine. That was the crazy thing. Now, I will say, going back into day 2, about halfway through, I realized, man, I was not physically feeling like I had been feeling for most of the trail, because most of the trail I had been feeling really strong, and I've been doing over 20 miles roughly at this, before this hike, with my pack on, practicing, getting ready, that sort of thing. My daughter and I have been hitting parks. We hit the shakedown hike at South Mountain State Park, in August, and so we were really like ready. And so I couldn't figure out why I kept getting so tired. But you saw probably a picture in day 2 where we were laying down in a shelter, and I had a smile on my face. But I'll tell you, part of why I started laying down like that was because I was just getting physically exhausted. My muscles felt fine, no cramps, nothing like that, and that's what made this feel so unusual. So here we are, top of Hump Mountain. They slide me into the helicopter. They fly me off to Johnson City Medical Center, who I didn't really know anything about, but turned out to be the perfect place for me to go, praise the Lord. And what happened was, when we got there, we found out after a fairly short time, that I had a H. pylori bacteria in my stomach, which I guess is very common. Like half of Americans, or whatever they say, like a large percentage of our population has them, and sometimes they don't really ever cause a problem. Well, mine caused a problem. Mine created an ulcer, or there was an ulcer that began to develop in the same area, whatever it is, something along those lines, and the ulcer ruptured. And turns out, actually, it had started bleeding out on the first night on trail, and I really didn't quite realize, without going into gross details, the evidence of this ulcer. And so, having seen some things that might would have usually given me some ideas of an ulcer like this before, I do have some idea of what to look for. But this just, and the evidence I had seen didn't appear as that. It seemed like something else. And so I had not paid as close attention to it. I just simply thought, my stomach's bothering me. Oh, I'm eating this or eating that. There are some certain protein bars and things that sometimes my stomach has a funny reaction to or whatever. So I'm thinking it's all kinds of other things right now because, again, overall, I'm physically feeling great, especially through about halfway of day 2. But I will say, as we finished up day 2, my nephews had to carry my pack. Getting to Johnson City, they found this out. They told me they were going to have to do an endoscopy the next day to go in and maybe have to clip this thing off if it was still bleeding. Well, again, just a praise to God. The next day, they got me in for the endoscopy. They did a great job, by the way. I will say the doctors took great care of me, especially the GI doc who went and did this endoscopy. There's always a risk for scratching, for pain, things of that nature. I had none of that the next day, so I'm really thankful for that. And again, just thankful the way that things turned out because they had a GI specialty area at that hospital. So it was definitely the best place that I could have gone. And so he went and checked it. And when I came out, he's like, you know what, this thing's already basically healed. He's like, I didn't have to clip it, didn't have to do anything. We took a biopsy, which came back with no other issues. Later I found out. So everything was basically okay. And we tried to figure out what caused it. So they asked me, did you take any, aspirin or Advil and things that would have caused it? And of course I had taken like one here, one there, and but there was nothing that was really conclusive. It sounds like it was a culmination of things. It was stress on the body. I had definitely not slept well the night before. We got like an hour's sleep. I did take my usual like one Advil in the morning, aspirin at night kind of thing that I usually did, or maybe it was the other way around. It was like a little ritual I used to do. But the bleeding had actually started the very first night on the trail, which means this thing had already ruptured before I'd even started taking anything other than maybe one tablet. So while I was in the hospital, once I was already on the way and everything, the nieces, the nephews, my daughter, they all hiked back out by Over Mountain Shelter. Met up with my sister and brother-in-law over off of Yellow Mountain Gap. It's I think Roaring Creek Road. There's like a gravel road that goes up to the gap there, and they pulled them out of there. They got them. They took my daughter and one of my nephews, the one we call Science, over to get my truck, which is parked at the station at 19E. Picked that up, and they drove to the hospital. My wife had driven straight through 3 hours from the Charlotte area. We lived in Concord, and so she drove straight through and came and brought me some clothes and things. And she got to see me briefly in the ER, but it was brief. And I FaceTimed, I think, with my daughter, if I remember right. Science stayed with me. He went and stayed at a hotel the 2 nights I was there, and day 3 I was out, and just felt, not myself, not strong, a little, just not with it. Just like you might imagine, my blood count had gotten super low, down into like the upper 7s or low 8s, and so just had to work all that back up. The problem, of course, for me was I wanted closure on my hike, right? I wanted to go finish what I'd set out to do, my first real section hike on the AT. So I did everything I could do to really get myself back into shape. I made sure I was taking my iron tablets. I made sure any medicine I was supposed to be taking I took, anything I could do physically to eat right and drink right to get everything back. The problem was it still was going to take a couple months to get where I needed to be physically to get back out on trail or do anything with very much physical activity. Even at work, guys wouldn't let me lift much or do much, for a good month or two. So that was tough because now we were going into winter. I don't have winter gear. See, I watch videos like you're doing right now. I just couldn't wait to get back on trail. So finally got a chance in February, March, I think somewhere in there, to start doing some of my practice hiking again, and set out in end of March to go finish this section hike. And so my oldest niece, who was out with me on the hike this back in September when I started this whole thing, my daughter, and then my younger niece from my sister's side, she also came along, and the 4 of us set out to finish this hike the way we the way we planned. So we're about to show you now what is day 4 of this whole thing, and we actually hiked in the way that the kids had came out. So we went in up to by Over Mountain Shelter, and we hiked back to that tent site. We stayed the night, and we went and finished. And I hope you're ready to enjoy the wrap up of this section hike that we took way too long to accomplish, but we did get it done. It just shows that when something happens, you don't have to quit. You get back out. And as I always say, you follow the horse, you get back on and go finish what you started, right? That's one of the things in our house we always talk about, finish what you started. So we went back to finish what we started. And so tomorrow I'll bring to you the next day, section hiking, as we moved back into that tent site. And then the next day after that, we'll be completing the hike going all the way to 19E. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe.